Hi everyone and welcome back to another Monday guide. So I'm just gonna put it out there right from the start, the world isn't flat in HOI4. I know, it very much looks like it considering you play a map game on what looks to be a very flat map. But I've done a lot of testing and I've got the proof. So before you burn me at the stake, let me just walk you through how the day-night mechanic works and how it affects naval battles, very much depending on where and when the naval battle takes place, which I will explain in just a little bit. I hope you guys will enjoy this guide. So, to all of you haters out there who's been calling me a psychopath for using the day and night visual effects when playing the game, especially now multiplayer games, Jonte Boppus, you know who you are. This is the time for you guys to eat up your words because it actually has some in-game application when playing the game, which I will prove to you real soon. So, just so you know, and if you weren't aware already, the day-night visual effects is just not random, but it's a calculated mechanic with a clear pattern depending on the seasons in the game. So, for example, when there's winter in the game, and winter from a Western European perspective would be like, now it's the 16th of January. That means that there will be less hours each day with daylight in the northern part of the map that you can see clearly now when the days, the sun passes by here. So there will be less daylight in the north, while there will be much more in the southern part of the map. So in South Africa, there will be more daylight per day in South Africa right now. If we fast forward to the summer, it will be then reversed and more daylight in the northern part, daylight per day in the northern part of the map, while there will be less in the southern part of the map, and so on. And why is this important? Well, as you know, there is a dramatic difference when playing the game for land battles, air battles, and naval battles when it comes to day and night. So depending on where and when you have a fight in the game, there might be more or less of day versus night when playing the game, and that might be very dramatic, especially if you end up with only having night when you play the game and you have, for example, naval bombers that prefer daylight, so to speak. So that's what I will focus on in this guide, the Navy side of this. Alright, so let's start with the easy one, and that is regular ship types in a naval battle compared to carriers, because they are a bit more complex, so I'll take carriers later. But regular ships, they have 4 different gun types. You have light guns, you have heavy guns, you have depth charges, and you have torpedoes. The 3 first ones, they fire once every hour in the game, where the 4th one, they fire once every 4th hour in the game. And like we talked about before, the day-night visual effects, that gives you an indication on how many hours each 24 hours is in daylight or in nighttime, depending on where you are in the map. So right now we have a naval battle in the lower Baltic Sea between the Soviets and the UK. This is in the northern hemisphere then, and we're in January. It means that a higher percentage of the 24 hours each day will be in nighttime compared to daytime or daylight. So most of the hours will be in nighttime in this battle, each 24 hours. And that you can see that, and you can see it on the map as the graphics change. But as soon as the very nice graphic passes by where you have the battle, this one will also change. So right now it's nighttime, and then it will change to daytime. So it follows the hour as you can see them visually on the screen as well. And since it's nighttime, how this affects a naval battle, you can see down in the night modifiers at the bottom here. So naval hit chance, the second one, is minus 25%. And fleet speed when retreating is plus 10%. So it's easier to run away during nighttime, but it's much harder to hit something. And this is important because, like I said, every hour, 3 of your gun types, they try to fire and try to hit the enemy, and they have 25% less chance to hit something during nighttime. And the torpedoes have 25 less, but once every 4th hour instead. Then, of course, there are some modifiers like night fighting spirit, and there are some other things for some countries that can affect how well you fight during nighttime. But it's worth considering that there will be more hours of night versus daylight depending on where you fight and when you fight, basically. So, before moving on to the next part, I just want to take a short moment of your time and say that most of you watching this are not yet subscribed to the channel. So, hit that subscribe button and you will receive a new guide from me and Boppus every Monday. If you want more guides and you want to support us at the same time, then you can become a patron, and then you'll receive a full archive of our 35 Patreon exclusive guides that we made already. And you could also just become for a month to check it out and then unsubscribe again if it wasn't to your liking. But we also release a new guide every second week for our patrons, and we have a Discord and some other nice stuff. And also a quick shout out to, let's say so I say it right, Rob's Red Hotspot for correcting my English. I've been saying this sentence wrong. Not yet subscribed. I've been saying that wrong for I don't know how many guides. So thank you for finally correcting me and letting me know how to use the English language. I think this is a common theme in our channel. So thank you. Alright, so let's then move over to the more complex part of naval battles, and that is carriers and airplanes flying from carriers. So carrier NAVs, CAS, and carrier fighters. And you probably already figured it out, but if you haven't, let me take you through it. So if you look at the naval battle here again, at the top you saw the night modifiers here in the bottom that says air traffic minus 100%. What does that mean? So you could, if you hover the airplanes here to the right, you see that their air efficiency now have 0%. This means that out of the air wing of 24 naval bombers, only 0 of them will fly, and that's what it means. So right now my efficiency is down to 0, and thanks to nighttime. And the same goes for the carrier fighter here as well. So, and if you didn't know it as well, planes flying from carriers, they make sorties 3 times each day. So every 8th hour they try to make a sortie, unless they're like stuck on the ground thanks to nighttime, because then they won't fly. So, and this is then of course the tricky part when it comes to daylight and night, because depending on where you are on the map and what season it is, there will either be more daylight or there will be less daylight. So right now we're, like we said, we're in the Baltic Sea, the Battle of Visby, and we're in the 13th of January, which means that there will be a lot more night versus daylight this time of the year. So most likely you will be unlucky and only end up with 1 sortie each 24 hours in daylight, which means that in effect your carriers make half of the damage that they would usually do somewhere else on the map, as compared to somewhere else on the map. So if you're unlucky, then the sun will just set when the first sortie happens, and then there's still sun up for the second one, and they will do fly damage, and then the sun will set, and the third sortie will be in night again. So that's what probably will happen in this time zone, or yeah, this altitude, or whatever you say. Alright, so now to the really interesting part, and this is the thing I think most of you weren't aware of, and I wasn't aware of before I did a lot of testing for this guide. And that is that different naval zones, and probably also season, I haven't tried different seasons yet, but at least different naval zones, have different hours in the game where they make the sorties. So depending on if you have a naval battle happening in the lower Baltics compared to in the Gulf of Bothnia or somewhere else, the time slots where they actually make the sorties are different. So that on top of the ever-changing day-night cycle in that zone could end up having like you could end up having 1 or 2 sorties happening depending on where the fight happens, even more so compared to if they would always fly at 10 o'clock, but they don't. So for example, and this is the interesting part, so I did testing. So in the lower Baltic Sea, when I did my testing there and the naval battles, they ended up doing, they had daylight, daylight came just at 7 o'clock in the morning, and that's exactly where my NAVs flew away and did damage. And I could measure this by hovering up here, so you can see when the naval bomber damage ticks in. And they did that at 7 in the morning and also 15 in the afternoon. So even though it was winter, I could still make 2 sorties a day in the lower Baltic Sea, which was very nice and surprisingly good. Then if I just moved up to the Gulf of Finland outside here of Leningrad, then it changed. So they made their sorties at 10 o'clock, at 18 o'clock, and 02 o'clock, which meant that the 10 o'clock one was perfect. Then it was daylight, so they made a sortie, they flew away and did some damage. But already at 6 o'clock in the afternoon, it was nighttime again. So that one turned into like a no-fly. And then at 2 a.m., of course, also a no-fly. So just by coming at the same time of year, but the lower Baltics and the Gulf of Finland was 2 sorties versus 1 sortie a day, which is super interesting. And then I did a crazy one as well. So I tested up here in the Barents Sea at the same dates. And I ended up with 0 sorties a day, because even though there were very few hours of daylight, none of the sorties ended up in that interval. So it was less than 8 hours of daylight, and no of the sorties ended up in those 8 hours. So during January, a very bad idea to use carriers in the Barents Sea, because they won't fly at all. So this was completely new to me, because I assumed, as ignorant as you are, that they were the same hours of the day that the sorties would happen. And then I thought it might be different depending on when the naval battle actually starts, but it wasn't. It was always the same in the same zones at the same time of the year. I haven't tested if the slots would change for the season as well. I mean, the night cycle will of course change, but I'm not sure if the actual fly sorties will change on the season. So that's up for you guys to test if you want to. But I thought it was a very, very interesting fact that the mechanic worked like this. So what are my takeaways on this, and what can you use in practice when playing the game? So I think that from a general perspective is that you just getting that thought into your head when playing the game, that it's actually very much like reality when it comes to northern part of the world and the southern part of the world and the seasons. So if there's more nighttime, there will be more night fighting in general, which means that everything that buffs night fighting is very good to consider. But also carriers are useless, more or less. So the Barents Sea up here, that's also like a fringe user case where carriers are on one time of the season worthless, but on the other time of the season excellent, because they will have sorties all the time, probably up here. So there are some extremes as well. I'm not sure if it's worth thinking around it in terms of build wise, but it might be good to know that, okay, if you're hunting submarines during winter, don't use your carriers during that up in the Barents Sea, because they won't find anything, because they won't fly. But during summer, brilliant, use them to catch all the submarines up there. So there are some user cases where this could be useful. But I think also that if you're playing a country in the northern part of the world, like Finland or some other country, I mean, you could use the knowledge that there will be more nighttime or daylight to your advantage as well when designing your navy and picking your spirits and so on. So night fighting will be more useful in general in those areas. But there might be other natural focuses, something that you can use when thinking about this. And also, I think the UK has some kind of buff towards night fighting and carriers and so on. That's unique for them. So that's also very useful in general. But yeah, I hope you guys learned something new, and I will continue on this theme, but moving on to land battles and air battles, and also how you could affect the modifiers on this as well. So staying tuned for more daylight and the night fighting going forward.